Welcome into Philthy, a Philadelphia Eagles podcast brought to you by the I Said What I Said podcast. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. Tyson, we're back today, baby. We got a lot to dive into. Breaking down the week one, what we saw against the New England Patriots, talking about all the injuries that have occurred for the Eagles. We have our first player hitting the IR, and then we're going to get into what we expect to see against the Minnesota Vikings. But first, I'll throw it over to you. I know there's a lot of panic in Philly land and a lot of panic around the country. Just, the Eagles don't look so good. What was your thoughts off the top?
I mean, wake me up on Friday. You're playing an all-time good coach on the road against a really good defense, and things were hard, and they didn't look um, like they were sloppy for sure on offense, and the defense was really good in the first half, and it was like, okay, if this is going to be the Sean Desai experience, I'm here for it. We're bringing pressure on third down, something John Gannon refused to do for a couple of years. Guys seemed to be in the right spots, and then it got really leaky really fast, and it felt eerily similar to like watching like those Gardner Minshew starts if Jalen Hurts just happened to be the quarterback. And it's tough, to be mad because my main takeaway is like, oh, the Eagles won a close game. There was 3 close games in 2022, right? And Gardner's behind center for 2 of them. Like, to me, it's not a bad thing to get out a squeak out a victory on the road to start the year. This is an experience the team didn't even have a year ago.
Yeah, and so let's just dive into week one. I think that's very succinct and the way you put it, right? Like, this was a new experience, I think, for the Eagles team, for Eagles fans in the past, especially after last year, and then what people have perceived that the Eagles to be. But Tyson, we said this. This is a team who is facing Bill Belichick, who had all offseason to prepare for this offense and what this was what was going to be thrown at him in the first game from a new offensive coordinator on the road. And so I think that should be a little bit more of a perspective.
In the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, poor weather. This was emotionally with Tom Brady.
New defensive coordinator. New faces everywhere. It's like, it's Philly, so you're going to be mad. But part of it was like, chill.
I haven't heard as much anger from Philly fans. I think everybody kind of was like, okay, it was first game of the season. Starters didn't play. I think it's more of the national discourse that I'm hearing that's crazy because I think everybody just wants to be like, no, I told you Philly sucked. Like, they played a bad schedule. And it's like, they're actually really good. It just so happens they ran into Bill Belichick, who was in his bag defensively. And this was a team that looked rusty by not playing in the preseason. And I think they had to get used to the coordinators a little bit more than I expected them coming into this, Tyson.
Yeah, and they're going to have to do some work there because, I mean, we made fun of it all year last year, but it worked. Dallas Goedert screens on 3rd and 12. All of a sudden, you got a 1st and 10, and it was very close to the line of scrimmage, or it was a deep shot, seemingly. That's kind of how it felt. And I thought AJ caught that one down the sideline. I understand he was bobbling if you go like frame by frame, but I don't think that's like the way the rules interpreted versus the way the rules written is a little different. But like nothing was easy, and they come out, they get that early touchdown off the turnover, and it's like, okay, this is going to knock the rest off. We're going to be all right. And then nothing happened. And Brad, the worst play of the game was Jalen Hurts' fumble. And
yeah,
that's on him, and he owned it, I thought, in the post-game press conference a little bit. He took some accountability there, but I mean, it was the Kenny Gainwell show, and that's the main takeaway I have from week one. Like, what the fuck, dude? I'm not a Kenny hater, but what did he get, 18 touches or something like that?
18 touches, 14 carries, 4 receptions, 54 yards rushing for a 3.9 average, and then 5 yards on this reception, ending with 20 receiving yards.
At what point in Kenny Gainwell's Eagle career, and again, I'm a Kenny Gainwell fan, did you think, man, that's a bell cow? That's the guy that's going to carry a backfield. He should out-touch A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and everybody on the offense besides Jalen Hurts.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the game plan that the Patriots put in place. Like, I don't think they went in offensively and were like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and Gainwell's going to get 4 receptions.
Well, they didn't hand it to Swift until the 3rd quarter.
Yeah, I mean, he only got 1 carry. He only had 1 reception that went for 0 yards. Like, DeAndre Swift, who everybody was expecting to come in and light this offense on fire, at least take it to at least a new level, was a ghost. And then Sirianni comes out and says, hey, that might be that way for this guy, which is concerning, or is it more so we're just going to kind of hold our cards a little bit. Like, this is a long season. I think people don't understand that. Like, for the first 6 months of the season, or the first 6 weeks of the year last year, Tyson, the Bills looked like the 85 Bears. Like, they were stomping everybody. The problem was they peaked too early. And the Eagles and Sirianni know this is a long build, right? If we want to get to where we want to go in the Super Bowl, like, we can't come out and just be gangbusters immediately. Like, there's going to be some things we got to work on offensively and grow on. And maybe that's what DeAndre Swift is going to be later. Like Rashad Penny, he was inactive, a healthy scratch. Like, he's a guy who gets hurt all the time. Like, I think, honestly, the idea behind this, and this is just me, I'm speculating. Like, I have no report on this or inside info, that they're trying to build this team for later down the road. Like, they don't need to come out and just put up 50 immediately.
Well, that would be nice, and that would certainly ease some concerns that people have. I also think, like, when you compare them to their peers, and the 49ers just absolutely dog walk the Steelers, and then the Cowboys show up and do what they did to the Giants with a 40-0 victory on Sunday night in front of the whole nation, then it becomes a lot easier to be like, well, Philly only beat the Patriots by 5? And then instead of giving New England credit for what they did or acknowledging some of there was real shortcomings from that Eagles offense on Sunday. Absolutely, there was. There was real shortcomings from the Eagles defense. A win is a win, dude. Like, the Bengals got crushed. The Chiefs come out on Thursday and lose. The Bills lose to Zach Wilson after on a kick six, basically, to end the game there. And it's like, good teams will lose week 1. I think that it's a pretty good sign right now, if you're an Eagles fan, that they looked like that and they won, because I have no feeling that this is going to be the way this offense looks going forward. It's too much talent to look like that.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on this, we'll get into the injuries that come out of this game. Jalen Hurts only threw for 170 yards, only 5.2 through the air, had that fumble, and they only rushed for 97 yards total, 3.9 per carry for this Eagles offense. Dallas Goedert, 0 catches. DeAndre Swift, like we highlighted, 1 catch for 0 yards. Devontae Smith, 7 catches, but only for 47 yards. And then defensively, you gave up 316 yards passing, 64 to a running back, 56 to an opposing tight end. And so there's some questions there, I think, moving forward. But like you said, wrapping this thing up, the Eagles are 1-0, and that's what matters in the National Football League, especially when you have aspirations of getting back to a Super Bowl like the Philadelphia Eagles have. But Tyson,
real quick, before we get out of the Week 1 analysis, we can't get out of here without saying Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis look pretty good.
Yeah, they did.
They look pretty good.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And
that's
so, no, I think that's definitely fair, because 3.5 yards against them on the ground. That's a good start.
Forced fumble, flash plays. I mean, Jalen Carter was living in the backfield. And I understand the Patriots have patchwork inside interior line play right now, but dude, for his first game ever, like, that was everything you could have wanted, and he came up with the biggest play of the game.
Let's talk about some injuries here, because there's a ton that have come out of this game and not good, right? Like Nakobe Dean, he's going to be on injured reserve. It's a foot injury. He avoids surgery, but he's going to be out this week against the Vikings, the Week 3 game against the Bucks, Week 4 game against the Commanders, and the Week 5 game against the Los Angeles Rams. At least, like, we don't know that, like, he's on IR. That's at least what he's out for those 4 games. Tyson, the other scary thing, especially in this game facing Justin Jefferson and the offense that they have there, James Bradbury, the starting cornerback's out. Reed Blankenship, starting safety, who was great, I thought, in that game at times against the Patriots, is out. And then the guy we were just talking about, Kenny Gainwell, running back, he has already been ruled out as well. So the Eagles will be without 4 of their starters, and Fletcher Cox is questionable as well. So this is what we talked about before we came into the season. They were healthy last year, and we're already seeing them get banged up early.
And the Bradbury one, that was a concussion. I mean, that was weird, right? They pain in the field, and it was like, is he bleeding? Oh man, this isn't so good. Blankenship being out is going to hurt, I think, more than people are ready to admit. Sidney Brown had a great play as a gunner on a punt coverage. It's not the same thing, right? It's like Jordan Addison looked pretty good for his first start as a rookie. We know who Justin Jefferson is, and then T.J. Hawkinson. Like, they paid that dude a bunch of money. You don't think he's going to be involved in the game plan against a team with bad safeties and bad linebackers? Like, Nakobe Dean being out stinks. That linebacking core was bad before the season started. It was bad in week 1, and it's going to be bad until hopefully the end of February. But like,
well, hopefully not.
Christian Ellis was okay. Zach Cunningham was below average, but he had a play or two here and there that was good. And like Terrell Edmonds played a little bit of linebacker. I think we're probably going to see more of that on Thursday, just mixing and matching pieces. But now's the time for Josh Joe, baby. We've been asking for it, and here it is, man. And this is what an assignment for your first real start in the NFL. You're lining up. I mean, you imagine Slay's going to shadow Justin Jefferson as much as possible, but there will be moments when it's Josh Jobe on Justin Jefferson, and there will be moments most of the game when it's Josh Jobe versus the Blitnikoff winner in Jordan Addison.
Yeah, and then for the Vikings, their center, Garrett Bradbury, he's out with a back injury, and then their tackle, Christian Darrisaw, is questionable with an ankle injury, and then the outside linebacker, Marcus Davenport, also questionable with an injury. And so that's the injury report that we have here, Tyson. Just kind of getting to the impact, and we said it already a bit, but this is an Eagles team that I don't think can afford too many injuries on this defense, just because it's a new face in Sean Desai. It's a defense that is fairly thin, in my opinion, especially when you highlighted the linebacking unit. A secondary that, even when healthy, they got pretty torched up by Mac Jones and what Bill O'Brien was doing last Sunday. Now, again, we don't want to overreact to that, right? Like, that's just 1 week, and that's with a ton of time for a really good offensive coordinator and Bill O'Brien and Bill Belichick to put together a game plan on how they want to attack. But if you start piling up these injuries, I think that's where it gets more concerning, because, Tyson, they already are bringing off a linebacker off a practice squad and Christian Morrow. They signed Rashaan Evans to their practice squad. So they're just like replenishing players and like already bringing them up. They already have one linebacker, Sean Bradley, who's primarily a special teamers. He's on IR. Like, so there's a bunch of stuff going on. And I think that's where it gets thin, and that's where it gets concerning if you're on the Eagles front here.
Side note, but Rashaan Evans would be the best player in the 1980s in the NFL. The way that dude plays linebacker, like, he just was born at the wrong time. But yeah, dude, it's going to get weird, and it's going to get interesting, which honestly I'm kind of looking forward to, because I want to see if Eli Ricks, if that preseason magic was real. Like, get that dude on the field. Let's see it. And who are you worried about? Justin Jefferson? You just had to play Kendrick Bourne, who apparently is like the second coming to Randy Moss. That dude went off. Mac was fitting the ball into windows that you just hadn't seen really him make throws like that before. Hunter Henry with some great catches and things like that. The secondary is going to be the secondary. And if you thought anything different going into the season, relying on two, 32-year-olds on your outside corners, like, you were crazy. There was a reason they signed all these 25-year-old dudes before camp. Like, Greedy Williams got cut. That's not a conversation that people were really having when it happened. I mean, the guy's not a difference maker, but he's going to catch on and play at some point for somebody else this season. There was a reason Philly brought in 10 of those guys, because they knew. So now we're just going to find out earlier than probably expected. And it's also good that Nakobe Dean, the timeline is against Baker Mayfield and Sam Howell. And like, Matt Stafford looked really good, but it's still going to be Puka Nacua. There won't be Cooper Kupp out there. And so a little easier to stomach that than later this season when it's like Josh Allen, Dak, Geno Smith, and those guys, Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, if there's a time that you're going to have guys missing games, like, this is the time right now, because this is a easy front-loaded schedule for the Eagles that they can take advantage of without having to really have their best players available, in my opinion. Now, I'll also say this before we get into the preview, Tyson. This is going to be the time that Jalen Hurts has to show he's the franchise quarterback, because the defense, I think, is not going to be able just to constrict opponents for the first part of the season just based on these injuries. Like, he's going to have to step up, and this offense is going to have to put up some points. So it was great last year, right? Like, we were all asking, hey, Jalen Hurts, we need to see the next step. He did that. I think this is the next step in his career. Like, we're not talking about a guy in Jalen Hurts who's at the pinnacle, right? Like, he's not Mahomes. He's not a Burrow. He's not a Brady or a Rodgers, what they've accomplished. Like, this is a guy who still is growing in his young career. I think he needs to take the next step. Like, okay, defense, don't worry. We have you covered on offense. Like, we're going to push the ball down the field. We're going to score a lot of points so that if we do get in shootouts, we got you covered. All you need to do is just make one play.
That's why him fumbling was so weird, because it was like we got the ball back. Jalen Hurts is under center. Like, we're not turning this thing back over. This is Jalen Hurts, boy. But still won the game. He's a winner, man.
All right, let's get into week 2 preview here, Tyson, because I think there's a lot of different angles that we can attack this from. Now, one, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings is new, and it's Brian Flores, who was with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year as a defensive analyst when the Eagles absolutely shredded up the Steelers because they blitzed them. 35-13 was the final score. Jalen Hurts, 285 yards through the air, 4 touchdown passes. I mean, they could do everything they wanted in this one, because if you blitzed them, he was going to find guys. Like A.J. Brown, 156 through the air on 6 catches. Goddard, 64 yards with 6 catches. Like, it was one of those games where everything was going right. So is that going to be something Flores does in this one? Because that's in his DNA. Like, what do you expect him to try to throw at this offense?
I think it'll look a lot like how Brian Flores coaches defense. It's not like he's a bad defensive coordinator by any stretch of the imagination, but like, the book's out, right? I mean, he's going to try to bring pressure. He's going to try to leave his guys on somewhat of an island when he can, and provide as minimal safety help as necessary. The problem with that style is, like, A.J. Brown was living in the end zone last year against Pittsburgh, and you could throw 2 at him, 3 at him. Sometimes guys have those days. But the main thing I'm looking for here, Brad, that offensive line needs to get reintroduced. Like, maybe not to each other, but to the rest of the NFL. It's looking a little bit shaky, right? Because they're supposed to be, on paper, this is the best offensive line in the league. All we hear all offseason, best offensive line in the league. It doesn't matter who plays running back for Philly. They're going to run for 150 yards a game. And then it looked like that. And the Patriots have really good players. They have really good defensive linemen. So don't, like, read too much into that. But I think that if there ever was a moment where it was like, why is Rashad Penny here? Kenny Gainwell's going to miss the game. Rashad Penny should be the one to be the main beneficiary of that, because I just think there's giant holes that can be opened up against this Vikings team. Tampa Bay they can't run the ball on probably Alabama right now. I mean, it's a bad rushing offense. So Philadelphia needs to exploit that, because Jalen's awesome and the receivers are awesome. Their lives are made so much easier when you are just gashing somebody for 5-6 yards a pop. How many times were they behind the chains in week 1, like, that we didn't even see for stretches of games, like multiple weeks last year?
Yeah, it was strange. And it was definitely an angle, and I'm not sure if this was something that they both decided on, that being Brian Johnson, the new offensive coordinator, and Nick Sirianni, but they threw the ball a lot and didn't even look to run. Like, it was really weird. Like, it was like,
and
okay, we're a pass first offense
RPOs turned into mesh plays instead of like pulling and throwing.
So I don't know. That's something to keep an eye on, and maybe that was like, okay, this has been a problem spot for the Patriots in the past. We'll see if we can attack it, and this is what we practiced on. But let's get back to what we normally do here, because Brian Johnson did say he's not going to change up too much of what Shane Steichen was running last year. So this should be an offense that looks extremely similar, especially when you have your quarterback back and all these weapons as well. But I agree with you. This offensive line needs to just push them around, because Tyson, last year against the Vikings, they ran for 163 yards. They ran the ball 34 times. Miles Sanders, 17 carries, 80 yards. Jalen Hurts, 11 carries, 57 yards, got in the end zone twice. He also threw for 333 yards as well, averaging 10.7 per completion. So, this is a team, and they dominated the Vikings, right? Like, this was a primetime game. Everybody was like, okay, this is going to be huge. We're going to watch this, right? Like, the Vikings look good week 1, and it was the same thing, right? This is a week 2 primetime game, and the Eagles just had an avalanche in that first half. They went up 24-7. Nobody scored the second half. Like, it was a really strange second half, but the Eagles just like constricted them and ran out the clock. Like, they were like, yep, we got our lead. We're good. And that was like, okay, this is what this Eagles team is going to be this year. As far as how you think the Vikings are going to try to counter that, like, do they try to take away what the Eagles did on the ground? Do they try to take away how they attacked them through the air now that Brian Flores is there? I know you said you expect the Brian Flores defense, but like, what if you're the Vikings? What do you try to take away from this offense?
Well, number one, I'm going to bring pressure. Jalen Hurts is still, in all honesty, like average to below average when teams blitz him. And if you're going to point out a weakness, that's what it is. And you can run through the numbers too. I mean, he's not you blitz Pat Mahomes at your own risk. Jalen Hurts is going to. By the way, dude, he was hitting the ground early on like a lot of that stuff, and I'm for it for the next 10 years. But in the moment, I'm like, dude, what the. Last year you're getting freaky in the open field, like he likes to say. But yeah, I think bring pressure, make him process quickly, and get the ball out of his hands, because the longer he's able to sit back in the pocket, the longer AJ Brown has to run around down the field. The longer we imagine Dallas Goedert has, but I don't know if he's as involved in the game plan as he was a year ago. And it was 1 week, so I'm not going to read too much into it. But there were times where it was like Jalen is force feeding Devontae right now. And Dallas is open 10 yards behind him. Romo pointed it out like 15 times. But Romo also pointed out that Bill is running coverages that Tony has never even seen.
Right.
And he was around for a long time. So that's tough too. But I think they're going to bring pressure. And like the main way to beat the Eagles, don't let them run the ball for 150 yards. Like, it's easy to sit here and be like, well, when they throw for 350, they beat everybody. That's because that's how the NFL works, unless you're Kirk Cousins, unless you're 5 years ago Dak Prescott, right? Like, it's very it's like average now. When somebody pops out for 330, you're not freaking out. Tua just threw the ball for 5,000 yards and barely even like that's not even the story. The story is Tyreek went up. Stop them from being able to run the ball, bring pressure, and try to get them off the field, which might be easier than it was a year ago.
Yeah, we'll see. Like, I think definitely one way to stop this, like you said, stopping the run blitzes, I think I'd prefer over just all out trying to pressure Jalen Hurts, because we know you just throw a quick squirt into AJ Brown. I mean, I don't think this secondary is good enough on the Vikings to go man up on the outside against Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Dallas Goedert if he gets one-on-ones. So if you're going to bring pressure, I think you should do it in the running game. Try if you can stop that, and then get the Eagles into throwing downs where maybe you can disguise some things and do other things that Brian Flores takes away from what he saw Bill Belichick do last week. Now, on the flip side with the Eagles, everybody talks about Justin Jefferson, right? And rightfully so. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. They held him to 6 receptions for 48 yards last year. He was also targeted 12 times. So 50% completion percentage that Kirk Cousins had when targeting Justin Jefferson's last year. Darius Slay, you said it off the top. He's probably going to get the majority of this assignment, and he should. He did a great job on JJ last year. Adam Thielen was actually the leading receiver last year with 52 yards in this game. He's no longer there, so you expect it to be a Jordan Addison who fills in, or a KJ Osborne who maybe steps up. But this is a bad matchup for the Vikings because their offensive line cannot handle the pass rush that the Eagles have, and then now they're already banged up. Could this be a nightmare spot for Kirk Cousins and not even be able to get the ball to his wide receivers to test this secondary that's banged up?
This is the issue I've been running into, is because week one, it was like the second half especially was like watching a replay of most of Jonathan Gannon as defensive coordinator, because it's like if the quarterback gets the ball out of his hands in 2 seconds, the defensive line doesn't have a chance to get to the quarterback. And when you're playing 7, 8, 9, 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, it becomes a lot easier to kind of manufacture those short throws, dink and dunk your way down the field, find Ramondre Stevenson over the middle, things like that. Can't really walk up on the line of scrimmage against Justin Jefferson. Like, Darius Slay is awesome. There's nobody in the league that can do that. And so they're going to try to mitigate that pressure as best they can. I do expect Hassan Reddick to kind of find his way back into playing shape. I don't know if it was the thumb thing that he had earlier this offseason, but he didn't look like the guy from 2022 in week one. Jalen Carter, I thought, was the best defensive lineman on the field pretty much anytime he was on the field for Philly, which is both a good and a bad sign going forward. Justin Jefferson's going to want his get back, man. And I think he's probably going to get it. I really do. I mean, it's going to be really hard when – is it Sidney Brown going to be coming over the top? Like, this is a guy
he'll probably be the starter, I would imagine.
Right. And because I don't want to watch Justin Evans play football very much longer. No disrespect to Justin Evans, but I think that in 10 years there's going to be a trivia question on the Eagles starters from week 1 of 2023, and we're all going to forget he was there. This is a guy who struggled a little bit with coverage at Illinois. And so now he's going to have to provide help on the best receiver in the NFL. It's going to be tough. Basically, I think the Eagles defense wins this game the same way they've won games since Jim Schwartz left. And that's just being good enough when the moment counts. And whether that's a first quarter moment or a fourth quarter moment, they don't really care. they were more opportunistic on Thursday than they were, it seemed like, at the end of last season. And I'm wondering if that aggression kind of continues or if they were a little juiced up. It's week one. It's Mac Jones. Like, let's go. We got one early, and now we're going to fly around. If Minnesota comes out and scores right away, I'm really curious to see what this team looks like.
Gonna need turnovers, gonna need to put pressure. Like, that's the key to this game for the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Like, they have to get after Kirk Cousins. They have to force him off his spot, because if he's going to be able to sit back there with time, he's going to find these open receivers on this banged up secondary. Like, that's just how it is. So let's get into some predictions here, Tyson. The Eagles are down to 6-point favorites based on this injury news. The over-under now, I think, up to 49.5, 49. I gave it out at 48.5 on the I Said What I Said podcast earlier in the week, so it's a little good movement here for us. But let's do final score, final takeaways, what you expect to see before we get out of here.
Final score. I didn't prep this at all. I think Philadelphia's offense is going to look much better. I'm going to say 31-17 Philly. And I think that's because, like, this locker room is just full of so many veteran leaders that there's no way that they're okay with what they look like on Sunday, whether they got the win or not. I mean, I'm sure they're encouraged, but there's no way they're walking around there like they were in the middle of 2022. I expect some aggression, some anger, and maybe we're going to get like those fabled joint practice stories that we got from this summer, where it was like Philly got their ass kicked day one and the team showed up and rallied and truly dominated. And I'm hoping to see that, because honestly, Brad, if this goes sideways, then I don't know what to think about this team.
Yeah, well, let's just hope that doesn't happen here for Philadelphia Eagles Nation. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I think that we're going to see a lot of explosive plays on both sides here. So I'm going to go 31-24 Eagles. They get it done.
Getting over the over-under there.
Well, I really do think – I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think the Eagles are going to win. Now, I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm nervous for this game because of the firepower that the Vikings have. But my thing is, the equalizer is this Eagles defensive line that I think will be able to disrupt the game enough. And then I do think their offense is going to have major explosive plays that we did not see against a really good Patriots defense. And so here's what I'm expecting. We're going to come out of this game. The Eagles offense is going to look really good, and they're going to win. And I think they're going to flash a lot in spots, and we're going to be like, oh, that's right. That's why the Eagles are really good. We kind of throw the week one in the back burner and be like, that's right. You know, Bill Belichick is actually a really good coach. He's only won the Super Bowl how many times? And we're like, yeah, maybe we'll give this team a little slack, even though they still won the game on the road.
I really hope that's right. Also, low-key kind of nice that Keenan Nguanu is not going to be back there returning kicks. The special teams is still super concerning to me. I thought Sipos had like his best game ever as an Eagle, which was, that's not great anyways. But
well, it's a bright spot.
Yeah, I mean, we went into the offseason saying punter might be the biggest worry that we have on the team, and we come out with a bright spot week one, so we'll take it.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do it for our week two breakdown, our preview against the Minnesota Vikings. This has been Philthy, a Philadelphia Eagles podcast. We will be back if the Eagles look horrible against the Vikings. That's what we're going to say. We got a lot of content out that's on the I Said What I Said side, so we'll be reacting to this game eventually. But if it's really bad, we'll be back Thursday. But until then, enjoy the game, all you Eagles fans out there. Enjoy the week. We will talk to you next week. Peace.